Hello and welcome to DevOps. What, who, why, and how. I am Kendra Little and I am an evangelist for Redgate software. In the past, I've been a database administrator, a consultant who's worked with developers around the world to tune their SQL servers, and also a trainer on SQL Server and Microsoft Data Platform products. I have been awarded the Microsoft MVP, which is a great honor, meaning that I love to talk about how to use the Microsoft Data Platform and how to get the most out of it. And I'm also a Microsoft Certified Master in SQL Server. Now that's a really fancy certification, but essentially what this all means is I have been interested in how to use databases for many years, and I'm interested not only in how to tune them, how to set them up, how to do amazing things with them, but also how to get the most value out of them and how to make time in your life to focus on the really interesting stuff rather than doing things manually and by hand. So today when we're talking about DevOps, what we're really talking about is how do we focus on doing the really cool work and taking the most advantage of technology for our company. So I'm going to start out by talking about a company that we wouldn't necessarily think of as a tech innovator. When we think about tech innovators, a lot of times we think about e-commerce shops and startups. But tech innovation is really spreading in interesting ways these days. We're going to talk a little bit about Sysco. Sysco, this is the Wikipedia entry on Sysco, Systems and Services Company. Well, Systems and Services Company isn't necessarily a company that sells software. They are, in fact, the largest broadline food distributor. So if you're watching this, the likelihood that you've eaten some of their products is high because what they do is figure out how to provide large institutions with food. They have a lot of distribution facilities worldwide and operate in over 90 countries. So this is a company that, right, they didn't start out as a software development company. Well, a few years back, Sysco was upgrading its ERP solution. And this story comes from Deloitte's Tech Trends 2018 report. It's a fantastic report. The 2019 report is also out now. But in 2018, they lead the report with the story of Sysco. They were upgrading their ERP solution, and this was a fairly traditional upgrade. Their goals were, okay, we're going to clean things up a bit. We're going to standardize our processes, improve some ops, and, we're going to upgrade some hardware and, kind of get some of our legacy stuff out of the way. We're going to modernize our infrastructure, but we're still sticking with our existing solution. We're just upgrading it. Now, this still isn't cheap. These IT projects, they do involve both costs for our vendor software, hardware costs, cost of people doing the work. And they had a lot of independent operating companies, or separate operating companies, I should say, to upgrade. These are just the operating companies in the domestic United States. They were at a point where they had upgraded 12 of them, and they looked at the 12 companies they had upgraded and the 60 companies that were still to upgrade in this region. And the story goes in the Deloitte report that looking at this, they'd spent a lot of money, but they were not seeing advantages to the upgraded systems. Yeah, there are some advantages on just having newer hardware, so it's less likely to fail, but we weren't seeing that we're able to take advantage of it more. That's a real problem. So at this point in the rollout process, we've already spent a lot, but should we just keep spending? Because the cost is going to be really, really high. This is a major decision. And there's more factors to this decision too. Looking around at the competition, Sysco saw that their competitors are also working on optimizing their systems. And their competitors who were doing this, they were not spending as much, but what they were focusing on was providing features to customers that would win those customers away from other market providers. They were working on gaining market advantages by the changes they were making in technology. So this is a big problem. When you are a market leader, you are constantly having to look around and say, is someone disrupting this market? Is someone doing something differently and taking away my customers? Wayne Shurts is the executive vice president and CTO/CIO at Sysco. And he had a tough problem in this position when he looked at things at this point. Because once you're midway into this upgrade, you've already spent a lot of money. It is very difficult to change course because changing course is going to require spending more money. So we need to be really confident in what we're doing if we're changing course at this point. And we need to get a lot of buy-in from other people. We can't just do this as one person. We need to make sure we're going to be able to be successful. Wayne Shurts initiated this big change. And when he talks about what he did, there's 3 big components that he describes in the Deloitte report. He says a really important thing about changing course was focusing on, in the systems they had, in these ERP systems, they were using a vendor software, but there were a significant amount of customizations. And these customizations contained what they called the secret sauce. The features that their existing customers really liked that worked well for them. They focused on those features and making sure that what they did in the future continued those features and enabled them to add more features and do more cool things, but they didn't want to change the things that were really working. So focusing on that special intellectual property, focusing on what the customers currently really liked, was a key part of the change. They didn't want to change that. They didn't want to start over from scratch. They wanted to instead reimagine their applications and their architecture with the secret sauce as the focus and work in an agile framework in embracing DevOps. This is in the goal of saying we want to be able to surprise our customers regularly, to keep doing the things that they like about us, but also give them more things they can do or better ways to do certain things. We want to be able to do this regularly because it's not just our customers who expect this, it's our competition who's doing this as well. And in order to keep up in the market, in order to continue to be a market leader, we can't just do things the way we've always done it. Things are changing in the world. Consumers everywhere, whether it is a person shopping at home for something, saying, can I get a better rate on my insurance? Is there a bank who'll give me a better deal? Is there a car that can have better price, better value for me? Whether it's that person or whether it's someone at a business shopping. We all have magic computers in our pockets that can help us identify more often what is a better deal for us, what new things are available that can let us do things differently in a way we didn't do it before. Maybe I don't need 2 cars anymore. Maybe I can use car rentals or ride shares or other ways of doing things. More and more marketing now is getting smarter about reaching people who might be receptive to that and showing them those new things. So more and more, the pace of change in how we do things, whether we use services or whether we own something, we are becoming more receptive to that as a culture. And therefore, people providing services need to be able to change gears and have new offerings and different offerings so that they can keep doing the things that we still like, but also keep us with them because we say, oh, this is an interesting company. They really are good at not only doing what they've always done, but they are really going to adapt as time goes on, and they are a company that I should stick with. Sticking with a brand isn't just about that brand doing the same thing anymore. This is all very related to DevOps. And what I'm going to talk about in this talk today, we're going to go into 4 different areas. We're going to talk about what is DevOps. We're going to talk about who in your organization should be involved in DevOps, why organizations should adopt DevOps, and then how we can start implementing DevOps. This presentation doesn't have live demos in it. Talking about what, who, why, and how is going to take the full time for this, but we at Redgate do have lots of really awesome demos that you can see. So if there's a demo, if this talk inspires you to want to see a specific demo, drop us a line at sales@redgate.com. Tell us what you want to see, and we can absolutely hook you up with the right demo for you. So with that, we are going to dive on into what is DevOps. I've got a quick 2-question quiz. And there's just really two questions. And this is a tricky one because this is the kind of quiz that you have to choose the best answer. Understanding what DevOps is a little hard because this word gets thrown around a lot. But I think there is one definition that is really, really excellent. And here are your three choices for the quiz. Is DevOps, is it A, the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users? Or is it B, an approach that aims at building, testing, and releasing software quickly and frequently? Or is it C, a framework for managing work in teams of 3 to 9 members, which breaks work into time-box sprints that are commonly 2 weeks long? So pick your favorite choice on this. Just decide, mentally commit. Is it A, is it B, or is it C? And then let's take a look at the answers. I think the best definition of DevOps is by a fellow named Donovan Brown. He is a principal DevOps engineer, I believe is his title. He works for Microsoft, and he crafted this definition and described it in the blog post that you see the link on the screen at donovanbrown.com. And I think this is a fantastic definition because he packs a lot into a few words. DevOps is the union of people, process, and products. It's not just about automation, right? DevOps is about bringing together people with how we work and the tools that we use. So it's about the people's ideas as well as our methods of working and the tools that we use, bringing all of those together with the purpose. Our purpose is to enable continuously delivering value, not releasing changes. We could release a lot of changes without delivering value, right? I could make a bunch of changes to things that my customers, maybe they don't care, maybe they don't, maybe they're irritated, right? It's about, like, inherent in this is identifying what is really gonna be cool to our customers. What are they gonna like? What are they gonna use? What solves their problems? Maybe this is something our users know that they want. Maybe it's something they're asking for, but maybe it's also something that we have just identified and said, hey, what if we did this and tested on some of our users and it turns out, hey, that's really great for them. We might surprise them as well, but DevOps is about continuously delivering value to them. Now, the other two definitions, they're certainly not bad things. They're just related topics. So the approach that aims at releasing software quickly and frequently, that is the Wikipedia definition of agile. Agile is often used with DevOps. These are related things, but DevOps is broader than agile. It's about that continuously delivery of value, and it's not just about releasing software. It's about more than releasing software because we may need to reach into and have a lot of work with our marketing team, our sales teams, our customer service teams to help figure out what is of value to our users. The approach to writing software in which teams and customers collaborate to evolve requirements and solutions, that is a definition of Scrum. Now, comparing Agile and DevOps. Agile is a software development approach with an emphasis on small teams. This is very, very often used in DevOps. You don't have, DevOps, it's not like it prescribes you must do Agile development, but it works extremely well with Agile because they have very similar goals. So Agile kind of nests really well within DevOps themes, and most people doing DevOps use Agile methods. DevOps really emphasizes culture in a way that Agile doesn't quite. In other words, DevOps goes a little bit farther in terms of breaking down silos within the company and focusing everyone on the customer and what the customer values. Scrum is an Agile framework that is often used with DevOps, and a lot of things that Scrum emphasizes work very, very well with DevOps, like encouraging daily face-to-face collaboration and working in small units of work. DevOps embraces lean principles, and a lot of the principles in lean, one of the things that lean principles focus on is small units of work. And why would this help? Well, if we are trying to frequently deliver value, in a traditional way of doing things, one of the things we often did was at the beginning of a quarter, a group of people would get together and they would decide, here is our mission for the quarter, and here's what we're going to execute on. We have decided, we have the vision now, we're going to just execute on that. Go forward and deliver that vision. And throughout the quarter, we would deliver that vision. Well, we need to react much more quickly because it may turn out that 1 or 2 weeks into that quarter, we start to have some conversations with our users and we realize that that vision we had, our customers aren't that delighted by it. We may need to change course. Working in small units of work acknowledges that just in life, it just happens that things change. It may be that something else has changed in the market. It may be that we have changed our mind because we had an idea that doesn't really actually resonate. Emerging requirements, if we're working in small chunks of work, it allows us to say, yeah, we are going to do something a little different than we did a couple weeks ago. We're going to deliver something different. But if our goal is actually just to deliver a lot of value to our customers, that's a framework that we can work in. All right, so our second quiz question, and this is 2 out of 2, so this is the last quiz question today, is what is continuous deployment? This is another tricky definition because they've got lots of kind of concepts that work together. So is continuous deployment, is it a practice which begins by converting requirements into test cases which initially fail? Is it B, an approach that aims at building, testing, and releasing software quickly and frequently? Or is it C, a practice of frequently merging all developer changes to a main code line? Now, all of these can absolutely be good things. Your task is to figure out which one of them is the best definition of continuous deployment. So make up your mind, A, B, and C. Pause if you need to, take a moment. Okay, now we're going on to the answer. Continuous deployment. The best definition on this screen of continuous deployment, it is an approach at building, testing, and releasing software quickly and frequently. So this is very related to DevOps, but not exactly the same as DevOps. Because just, as we've said, just releasing software, that doesn't mean that my release didn't cause an hour outage. Right? Causing an hour outage, not necessarily bringing value to the customer. It doesn't mean that the customer even likes what I released. Just, continuous deployment doesn't think about necessarily anything about what you're releasing. It's just about building, testing, and releasing quickly and frequently. So it is a component of DevOps. It is something very highly related to DevOps. DevOps practices can enable it, right? But it isn't necessarily the same thing. So we don't want to necessarily use them as synonyms when we're thinking about what is DevOps. The first item on this list is test-driven development. And lots of people who do DevOps do test-driven development with Agile. It can work really, really well. So it's a related term. And then the bottom thing on this is also related. Frequently merging changes into a main code line, that is continuous integration. Continuous integration is one of the things we work on when we're trying to get to continuous deployment, because building, testing, and releasing software, we need to be merging our changes into a main code line and making sure that our changes work together, that my change in the system is being put in a way that in version control, it's being merged in a way that then it can be tested together with other changes. So continuous integration is definitely a related practice, but it isn't the same thing as continuous deployment. I could do continuous integration. I could merge all my changes in frequently, but not deploy frequently at all. I could deploy once a year. The fact that I'm merging changes together into a shared code line doesn't mean anything about how I'm actually deploying them. There's multiple terms about continuous delivery. And I think this is very, very important for database folks to know and to think about, because when we think about DevOps, we may assume that we're talking about continuous deployment, but we aren't necessarily. With continuous deployment, when I check things in and things go through this cycle of building and testing and everything that I've crafted, this may include performance testing. It can include lots of different checks. But with continuous deployment, things are just automatically deployed when they're ready. They're not scheduled for deployment. Now that can work really, really well with things like app servers, because with application servers, I can do things like, oh, hey, I've got a new release going out. Let's load up some individual web servers, which right now nobody's hitting these web servers. So we're going to get those all set up automatically. And then when we're ready to deploy, we're going to automate a process that switches the new ones in and the older ones out. And if there's a problem, we're going to undo the switcheroo. Things like that can work really, really well with web servers. But with databases, things are trickier. Because with databases, we frequently have one writable master copy of the database. We may have readable secondaries. We may have caches that people can read from, but writes tend to go to one centralized place. And this means that doing that switcheroo pattern, no, it's not the same. Many, many database changes can be deployed during the day and can be deployed frequently. I've worked in systems where we have deployed changes to the database throughout the workday in small batches, and those changes, no problem at all, because we have designed them and staged them in a way that we knew that those changes going in throughout the day were not going to cause an outage. We used patterns that worked with that. But even in those systems, we had some changes where we knew, oh, for this change, we are going to cause either blocking or there's going to be a period of time where this table will not be available for writes, or there's going to be an issue that this will cause either a performance issue or a lack of availability. And we have service level agreements that say you cannot just do that anytime. So for those changes, we need to be able to deliver them at a scheduled time in a window where that is acceptable to our customers. And continuous delivery is the practice of saying, we choose when to deploy. And with databases, continuous delivery can make a lot of sense. Now, continuous delivery, we can still deploy a lot of changes during the day. We're just being really careful to identify the changes that can't be delivered during the day that need that special handling. And you can absolutely do continuous delivery with DevOps. I'm a huge fan of releasing changes during the workday. And the key to that is finding ways to do it that are safe, finding ways to do it that are stable. The thing about releasing changes during the workday is very few people do their best thinking at 3 a.m. when troubleshooting an unexpected issue, right? So carefully finding ways to empower this, I think, leads to better quality, better stability, right? We don't want to just like start doing it without any preparation, obviously, but I think it can be an insanely positive thing and get you out of the cycle of firefighting in the middle of the night with your teams. So the relationship between continuous delivery and DevOps, they're not synonyms, but DevOps enables continuous delivery, and they are definitely very related concepts. And going back to that, when we're talking about what is DevOps, this is a recap of, I think, that fantastic definition by Donovan Brown of what DevOps it is the union of people, process, and products. It's bringing together the creativity, the ingenuity of people, and the problem solving of people with patterns of working together and different tools. Maybe we build these tools, maybe we buy these tools, but really focusing on using all of these assets to identify and test and deliver value to our customers quickly so that, like Sysco, we are able to give our customers what they want and surprise them rapidly and regularly, which more and more companies across all industries, right? It's not just food service, but across all industries, this is more and more the focus. So if we're going to do this, who should be involved in DevOps? There's a couple of anti-patterns, and they're there for a reason. Making a change like this, changing direction like this is hard. Change is difficult for people. And changing established processes is tricky too. So what a lot of folks do, a lot of companies have a DevOps team. I hear this when I talk to folks about DevOps. The number of times someone said to me is, yeah, we have a team who does DevOps for us. That is not a small number. And often people say this with a knowing look. And they have this knowing look because it is also, although we have a lot of places where there have DevOps teams, it's also widely known that someone can't do DevOps for you, that DevOps emphasizes a large cultural change and that it isn't just like, hey, we've got a group at our company who does DevOps. DevOps is about the company doing DevOps together. So let's talk about why this is. Having a DevOps team, now I'm not saying that all DevOps teams are bad. When you're making any kind of change, having a group of specialists who help work with everyone in the company and help say, here is where we're trying to go. Let's figure out the best way to get you there. Having a DevOps team where their mission is to help, like, hey, we have the vision of where we're headed to, and what we're going to do is we're going to go out and work with other teams. We're going to be embedded in those teams and help them get there. We're going to help make this culture happen. That can be very, very positive. But if you try to have a team do DevOps for you, say, we're going to do the DevOps thing, what happens is likely to be what happened to a company called Seek. Andrew Hatch is the platform engineering manager at Seek. You may notice that he's not currently the DevOps manager at Seek, and he wrote a fantastic article called Why We Don't Need a DevOps Team. And he explained that up until 2015, Seek did have a DevOps team. They created a DevOps team because they wanted to do some DevOpsing, and that team was responsible for builds, deployments, and ops support for the major websites. And Seek, what they do is they're a company in Australia, and they help do job finding. So their websites are a really big deal. So they had the DevOps team DevOps their most critical websites, but that team didn't have a very good quality of life, and they had an extremely difficult job. What happened was the DevOps team, they became very good at delivering changes, right? They became very good at building a pipeline and building automation and getting changes through, but they aren't the same people who are writing the software. So what happened was they became really, really good at pumping a lot of changes into these core systems, but there were problems. The quality wasn't as good as it should be, so there was a lot of firefighting in the middle of the night. And this is what a lot of IT teams are used to is, oh, we deploy changes, and then there's problems, and then we don't get any sleep, and then we have to struggle to get in the office at 9. That is not the goal of DevOps. This is absolutely not the goal of DevOps. The goal of DevOps isn't just to enable release tempo or to raise release tempo. Yes, that is one of it. When we're looking at DevOps performance, I think a very helpful way to think about it is to look at the research done by Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jez Humble, and Gene Kim. The 2018 State of Database DevOps report, it was published by the DevOps, I think it's Research Association. I always have struggle and put different words in for the acronym. They have been acquired by Google at the end of 2018. They were acquired by Google, and they're now part of that. But this is really, really important research and reports. They do a ton of research using surveys, and they ask people about their release tempo, and they ask people about their bug rates, and they ask people about their company's performance, and lots of questions about their processes. And when it comes to measuring DevOps performance, they say, yes, release tempo is a part of that. We want to know. We want to drive down, we want to drive deployment frequency up. And we want to drive lead time for changes down. So we want, as changes become code complete and tested and ready to go, we want them to be able to go out quickly so that it's not 3 months later and, hey, we had a problem with this and I don't even remember what the code I wrote was. So we want to deliver frequently, and we want changes to not have to wait for long periods. But also, a key measure for DevOps is, in addition, system stability. How many of our changes are having negative effects or going wrong? When we are having a problem, maybe it's a significant performance problem, maybe things are completely down, but how long is it taking to restore service? These metrics are also incredibly important. And bringing these teams together, the problem with having a separate DevOps team is we need, as soon as a problem can be identified, we need for it to stop the line of production. And the reason I'm making a hand gesture where I'm pulling down on something is lean principles. A lot of the thinking around DevOps came from lean management principles. And many of these were originated by Toyota and had to do with optimizing factory work, optimizing production lines in factories. And one of the key things that helps that work is that people on the line in the factory, if they notice a problem in quality or something going wrong in the system, they have the ability to pull a strap and stop the line of production. Stopping the line of production for a quality issue is painful. but it is a necessary part of the optimization of the system. We need to react really quickly when there's quality changes. We don't need it to be that, like, if our team is simply doing all the changes, pushing it out to someone else, and then if something goes wrong, that happens to another team in the middle of the night, that isn't right. We need the team who's writing the code to be part of this flow of deployment, so that at any point, if we notice a problem, we stop the line of production, we work on stabilizing the system, fixing the problem, addressing legacy issues that are related before we keep going. That becomes our next unit of work. That is very, very important in terms of driving stability and quality up. Just pushing changes into a system that aren't quality changes doesn't add value to our users. So we need to measure both of these things, and we should not separate them into, okay, this team does the DevOps and this team does the development. That doesn't produce very quality DevOps. And if you get into the State of DevOps report, you'll see that using the surveys, they do categorize performance as to whether a company is a low performer, medium, high, or even in the latest report, they have elite categorizations there. So DevOps is very, very measurable, but you do need to make sure to include quality in your release metrics, and the folks at DORA, the researchers, Dr. Forsgren and company, they do emphasize that as well, which I think is incredibly important. Another misunderstanding, and this one's easy to think about, is that DevOps is really about developers doing operations, and that it means getting rid of IT people. This is an assumption that a lot of folks on the IT side may have. They may hear about DevOps and think, well, that's about developers doing ops. That means that they're going to get rid of me. Well, absolutely not. Doing DevOps, we absolutely still need IT people. We still need specialists. This isn't just in large corporations either, where you have a giant SAN. This is also, even in small organizations, there's still a need for specialists. And this means that if you're a database administrator, or if you're a network administrator or a SAN administrator, this doesn't mean you losing your job, because, okay, developers have a lot to think about. Developers have a ton of stuff to learn, a ton of stuff to keep up with. They don't also need to learn everything about every other specialization. I mean, how will they ever get anything done? The point is to make developers more productive. And the point is also to make IT people more productive. The point is for everyone in the organization to do less manual work and to focus on delivering value to the customer, but we still need these specialists. Jobs always change and jobs always evolve. So specializations will have new areas for that person to do. So database administrators still will have reasons to think about, how do databases work? You know, how does an on-premise SQL server work with the data and the logs? And what is the optimizer? How does this work in Azure SQL database? How does this work in Azure SQL managed instances? Having somebody who just knows the different options, and right, that's just the Microsoft data platform. Okay, what if I go into another group? Having someone understand all these things, still incredibly valuable. But also, there's new DevOps specialties, which are going to become very, very valuable things to have experience in. So ways to become a senior database administrator. Okay, if you now become someone who knows what are the different strategies I can take with getting my code into source control, what are the options when it comes to branching with database code, and what are the pros and cons? That now is a very, very valuable thing to know. And senior level people, you're going to want somebody on your team who's really good at that, because this is different than app code. What are the different ways to test and release database code? And how do I manage deciding which tests are just going to be application tests and what tests I'm going to have at the database level? What approval and release gates should we have for stable deployments? How do I very quickly identify which changes can go out during a workday and which changes need an outage window? Like, how do I reduce the manual work involved in only reviewing the bits of code that need to be reviewed? That's a very valuable skill to have as well. What are my different options when it comes to quickly automating the provision of different data sets and ensuring that sensitive data is masked where it needs to be? That's also now a very valuable specialization for a data person. And then how do I make sure that we are continuously improving? And when we have problems with system stability, we are making sure that we don't repeat the same problems. In the database world, that is another area of specialization. We absolutely have emerging areas where people can learn these skills and have a route to possibly a path in consulting, but also a very well-paid senior level job that I think is a very rewarding job. I think figuring these things out is a lot more interesting than doing manual work of manually setting up the backups. And we want our time to be spent being creative and learning. I think it's just more rewarding that way. And if you don't believe me about database folks still being relevant, very famous company, Stack Overflow, they are a small company and they are famous for doing DevOps. They help people around the world complete their homework, solve problems at work. If Stack Overflow is down, right, everyone screams all over the world. You see it light up on Twitter. Well, Stack Overflow, they're a small team of people who are really good at lots of stuff, very cross-functional, creative people. They have a full-time database administrator. They have a specialist. Her name is Taryn Pratt, and you can check out her blog at tarynpivots.com. And she's talking here about an upgrade process, how we upgraded Stack Overflow to SQL Server 2017. But she does lots of other very cool work as well. Specialists are still absolutely needed in a DevOps world. It isn't that everyone becomes a developer, but one point that Andrew Hatch made in his article about why they don't need a DevOps team anymore is that we need to bring development into operations and we need to bring operations into development. It's both. So IT people don't need to become developers overnight, but should probably be pretty comfortable with scripting. And also, we should be spending more and more time with the team who build the applications, especially applications that have high uptime requirements. Instead of saying, oh, I need a 3-hour maintenance window to do my reindexing all at once, I should be talking with my development team about if we have customers around the world and we don't have a maintenance window for an outage, are there ways that we can work our maintenance in very small chunks periodically when it's a low use time for the system so I don't have to do it all at once? Or does that just not work? Maybe there's some functionality in our application that is reloading data in places and it can completely take over some of the index maintenance for that. We need to be looking for opportunities like that. DevOps also involves working closely with folks from marketing. Marketing isn't just about designing a brochure anymore. More and more, these transformations that are happening in companies, like we talked about Sysco, these also impact marketing, sales, and support. Marketing's mission, now in companies that are driving towards the digital transformation, marketing's mission is really understanding the customer, looking at the customer's behavior, listening to the customer, talking to the customer, but really trying to identify what is of value to the customer and being able to speak to that value. That is incredibly useful information when it comes to how should we guide and change our products and our services. Next up, who or why? So we talked about who. So going back one step, we've talked about what is DevOps. We've talked about who should be involved in DevOps. And the answer is a lot of it is development and operations, but also it's a broad cultural change that reaches out and breaks down silos through other groups as well. But now why should our organization adopt DevOps? Well, one lens I'm going to use to look at this, or 3 lenses I'm going to use to look at this, come from a paper called The ROI of Database DevOps. This is published by Redgate, and the authors are Matt Hilbert, Kate Duggan, and David Linwood. But the concept I'm talking about here, the concept originated with David Linwood. In this paper, he said, I think that we should look at the return on the investment from 3 different lenses. And I think that the lens approach is really, really valuable because a CEO is not going to have the same why for DevOps that a manager is, or a CEO isn't interested in what technology are you using to run your builds or your pipelines necessarily. And they just have very different views on things. So we're going to take those 3 lenses and we're going to ask the question of why DevOps for each of these lenses. Now, The paper itself goes into a lot of different details. It's a great paper, but I'm just swiping that three lenses concept a bit. Well, what is, oversimplifying a bit, what is the big picture role for each of these lenses? Well, the CEO, CEOs are tasked with being very forward-looking. What is the direction the company needs to go in to maximize the value of the company? CEOs often do report to somebody. They do have bosses a lot. They often report to a board of directors. Now, CIOs or CTOs, different companies have different titles for that. They are more strategic, but their job is really, really changing. Used to be the CIO, their job was to say, oh, well, this other business unit wants me to do something, so I need to provide this service for them. The old role of the CIO was kind of, I have a budget and I'm a service provider for other parts of the company. Now, the goal of the CIO is more, I need to figure out how my organization, which is critical to the success of the entire organization, how we can work with everyone else to deliver value to the customer quickly and regularly and have stable systems as well. So now it's more of a partnership between, instead of being an order taker for other business units, now this part of the company is more of a partner that needs to really, really work with other parts of the company to be able to get technology into everything we do and make it easier and easier to use that technology. Managers have a more tactical approach, and they're more interested in the success, health, and happiness of their team. And I do say happiness because if you're a manager and you have a team who's happy to come to work each day and they have a great time working with each other, they are going to be easier to manage than a team who is really tired and cranky when they come in and they don't get along super well with each other. If you have to spend time putting out, like backbiting and gossip between your employees, that is not going to make your life as a manager more easy. Your team's not going to be as productive and you're going to waste a lot of time dealing with things that you don't want to deal with. So health and happiness of the team is absolutely a direct concern of managers, whether or not they're a touchy-feely manager or not. It's much easier to manage a happier team than an unhappy team. Digging into the CEO lens, what do CEOs care about? They have to be forward-looking. They care about vision. Well, cost is an issue, and more, major failures are expensive. Whether the failure is a big outage or whether the failure is a data breach. Landing in the news and having it that when someone searches your company name, that what they're finding out is that you exposed credit card data or you exposed personally identifying information in the news results, that is very expensive. It damages your brand. It causes customers to leave you. It detracts from new customers. So CEOs are becoming very aware of the cost of data breaches and outages and being found to not be in compliance with regulations. They're also concerned with higher revenue. Higher revenue has to do with, as we saw with Sysco, being able to get new features to market quickly and being able to do it more quickly than your competitors. Also, we want customers to like what we do. So we want faster time to market for things that customers like. Getting something to market that no one wants to use isn't very, very valuable to a CEO. CEOs are hearing from a lot of places that they need to invest in DevOps. And one of those most important places is their board of directors. In a 2017 survey by Gartner, they found that 47% of the CEOs they checked with reported that they are experiencing pressure from their boards to transform their digital business. And when you hear these words, digital transformation, what a digital transformation means is putting technology at the heart of everything you do and saying we're going to focus on the secret sauce like Sysco, and we're going to focus on quickly delivering more and more solutions that delight our customers. That is inherent to a digital transformation. In the terminology with CEOs, a lot of times they will talk about digital transformation rather than talking about DevOps specifically, because digital transformation is more of a descriptive term of that larger cultural change rather than the name of we're using a specific methodology at the technical level. But these two things do go very, very hand in hand. There's other findings out there too that drive this. This is from a study that was done by James Besson at Boston University School of Law in 2017. And he looked at a lot of information around economics. So he's looking at industry concentration for different companies, and specifically, what puts some companies ahead of others, what helps some companies gain more market share than other companies. What he found was that in comparing different strategies that companies would take to get ahead, that building the right software was of greater benefit, resulted in greater market share than mergers and acquisitions did. So if you're a leader of a company and you're trying to make your company stronger and stronger, it used to be that mergers and acquisitions were one of the most popular ways to do this. It's still absolutely popular, but the focus now is, it's not just about acquiring the right company. And I don't know if everyone's been part of these, but I have been part of companies that have acquired other companies. Just acquiring a company that has cool technology doesn't mean you're going to be able to do anything useful with it. A lot of times acquisitions, you can acquire a company with really cool technology, but if you can't get the changes or the benefits of that technology into the rest of the company, it may not be that useful to you, and you may even mess up the company you acquired in the meantime. So we've got to be really careful about adopting the right technologies for the right purposes. In the same study, he found that the thing about developing really good software isn't that developing strong software can level the playing field between a little startup and a big established player in a market. Instead, having really great software can mean that that little startup has an advantage over the established player in the market and can more easily take away their market share from them. It tilts the playing field in favor of those who use it most effectively. In a 2018 poll, this came out in late 2018, it was, the poll was done by Harris Poll, that's who executed the polling. It was sponsored by Stripe. They asked more than 1,000 C-level executives, what are the factors that are threatening to your business, that are most threatening to your business? And they could pick more than one, so that's why the numbers don't add up to 100%. The top 3 things that are threats to businesses are security and data breaches, increased regulation, and disruption from the tech industry. I mean, the 4th is access to developer talent. Everything in the top 4 of these, DevOps can help with. DevOps can help reduce your chances of database breaches. It can help make sure you're in compliance with regulation and that you stay in compliance instead of trying to fit once a year into the compliance box. And it can make the most of your existing developer talent. It can make developers and IT people and everyone working with technology in your company do less manual work and be more productive. So those are in fact the goals of DevOps, to do those things. For CIOs, right? We've been talking about why DevOps for CIOs. Why DevOps for CIOs? CIOs want the department to be very, very productive and to be able to easily collaborate with people in other departments. Not to be so, I've got to do all of this stuff so I don't have time to talk to you. No, we need to identify what services, what products are really valuable to the customer. So we really need to collaborate with other people who have touch points with those customers. We also need to retain good staff. As we saw on the previous slide, access to development talent is a concern. I can tell you, access to quality database administrators, also very, very difficult. Access to really good network administrators, it's hard to find great people. Retaining people is cheaper than hiring constantly new people. And DevOps, if we are focusing on the quality of the systems as well as the rate of feature releases, can make the lifestyle of all of the people in our services better. It can make it a better place to work and easier to attract and keep good staff, because we aren't working all night and then phoning into the 8 a.m. meeting and then dragging ourselves into the office at 10 a.m. and kind of saying, wouldn't it be nice if I had a job where I didn't have to do this? In 2016, Gartner issued one of their prediction reports, and they predicted that by 2020, 50% of the CIOs that haven't transformed their capabilities, that haven't done this digital transformation, will be Well, displaced is a nice way to put it. CIOs are reading this, right? And CIOs are starting to realize, hey, we can't just do things the way we've always done them. We need to invest in a new way to do this. We need to look at releasing new features to customers more frequently. Forrester Research is another research group, and they in 2017 did a survey. They found that 64% of their respondents said their businesses are not happy with the amount of time it takes to release new features, and that of the people they surveyed, only 23% of enterprises were releasing at least monthly. So things are still quite slow. We still have a huge opportunity to speed up in delivering value. In that Stripe poll, asking more than 1,000 C-level executives, how much of a priority is it to increase the productivity of developers? Only 3% said it was either a low priority or not at all of a priority. Everyone else said reducing manual work, making our developers more productive is an important priority. And this is an indication that this is an area where these folks are willing to invest, right? Sometimes we're nervous about saying, hey, we want to change what we do because we may have to slow down. We may have to slow down briefly in order to become more productive, right? We may have to pay off some technical debt. But if it is a high priority to become more productive, this is absolutely a sign that raising this point and saying, if we make these changes, we will be able to be more productive. And yeah, we may slow down for a little while, but then we'll be able to make up for it. This is going to be of major interest to leaders in your company. So this isn't a time where we shouldn't ask, right? We may not always get a yes right away, but it's absolutely a good time to ask. For the manager lens, when we're thinking about how can our team be as successful as possible? We don't want our team to be called on the carpet for causing a lot of production failures and for production being down for a long time. We also don't want our team to just, like it's a team who causes problems a lot. You don't feel great as a team, usually. You want to be the team who's doing quality work and is working on something that you feel is a good product. This is a simplified diagram. This is taken from a book called Accelerate. So the Dora Group, Dr. Forsgren and Jez Humble and Gene Kim, they published a book called Accelerate that is a fantastic book. And it summarizes multiple years of this database DevOps report. And in this, from their survey results, they found that continuous delivery, like asking teams who do continuous delivery, that is a predictor of high software delivery performance. Well, wait, aren't those the same thing? No. Software delivery performance is, we are delivering updated software, but we've got quality metrics in there too. We are delivering value. And that drives organizational performance. Organizational performance being questions like, is your company profitable? Is your company gaining market share? Is your company doing well? As a manager, we want to know that our team is helping the company advance. And DevOps has been shown by people doing it well to accomplish that. It also gives us measurable global outcomes. Now, measurable global outcomes are really, really useful to managers. When I started out in IT, if I was on the IT side, I was measured on stability. The outcomes that were important for my job were production is healthy and is performing well for customers. But when I started out in development, on the development side, the outcome I was measured on was how quickly are you releasing these features? Like, how are you doing on writing these new features? These are not global outcomes, right? We have one outcome for this silo and one outcome for the other silo. DevOps emphasizes global outcomes. Everyone needs to be concerned about regularly delivering value, and that involves stability as well as release tempo. So if I'm a DBA, my goal isn't just that production is up and healthy. Yes, that is half of my goal, but the other half of my goal is we are regularly releasing value to the customers. And if I'm developer, same thing. This does mean occasionally stopping the line of production to take care of things. It does mean going back and paying off technical debt. DevOps isn't just for new apps. We can do it with legacy apps too. So these global outcomes and this ability to say, yes, there are going to be times when we need to take care of some legacy problems, because then we don't have to worry about them later and it's not going to cause system stability. That is absolutely a part of DevOps. All right, our final piece here. How can our organization start implementing DevOps? Well, I love this quote, but it is a little bit terrifying. That's part of why I love it. From that 2018 Tech Trends report from Deloitte, they say, if you are currently testing the agile DevOps waters, it's time to wade in. Okay, well, that sounds great. Wading is safe, right? But then they say, be like the explorer who burned his boat so that he couldn't return to his familiar life. All right, and that sounds a little terrifying. This quote, I believe, this is the main audience of this report, is company leaders like Wayne from Sysco, who's the CTO. And this approach is absolutely, this vision, I think, is an important one. But if we are not the CTO, but instead we are a practitioner in a team, it may not be a good idea to light the boat on fire right away. So, there may be a more effective approach we can take. There's two approaches to implementing DevOps. And in the best of all worlds, you're actually doing both of these at once, but often it's going to start on one side or another. The top-down approach, in that one, it's an executive, it's a leader like that CTO or the CEO who then talks to the CIO or CTO who says, we want to start this from the top down. Those executives are going to act as catalysts. They can't do it all themselves. They don't have perfect understanding of what the customer values. No, in fact, they've got a lot to do. What they need to do is identify innovators throughout the company who can help make this cultural change happen. They can seed prototype projects throughout the company and start the change that way. The bottom-up approach is where individual practitioners, individual contributors in different teams say, hey, we're going to change around the way that we're working. Now, if we don't already have executive support, we may want to be a little careful about this. We want to carefully select a prototype and we want to say, hey, we're working on increasing our productivity and we've built out this prototype project, and then identify different leaders in the company. They may be in marketing, they may be in sales, they may be in different parts, but start talking with people in different areas and ask them, are you happy with how, would it be good for you if we released changes more frequently? Would it be good for you if we worked in shorter cycles so that we could get information about how the customer is responding to things and acted on that instead of kind of deciding everything up front, so that we could innovate more? Would this be useful to you? And use those prototypes to get that support, to get that buy-in, and to then say, okay, we're going to start using these practices on more and more of our systems, not just the prototype anymore. So when executives are starting this, they're looking for those folks who can, the individual contributors who can also start radiating the cultural change back up, and they may work at hiring them. This is why becoming experienced at this, becoming familiar with these techniques can be a very powerful career move for both practitioners as well as C-level executives, managers, and everyone in between. So that's how you get started. A prototype is critical. Okay, well, what do I do? If I want a prototype, what do I do? We at Redgate think there are really 4 areas. We have a cog for DevOps, and for database DevOps, we think that there's really 4 things to think about when you're doing DevOps: standardization, automation, monitoring, and protection. Now, standardization, one very critical thing is getting your code into source control. A lot of people have this done for the application layer, but when it comes to databases, we do surveys at Redgate, and we have found that very, large amounts of databases, more than 40% of databases, 45% of databases are not checked into version control. So they lack that basic standardization. That standardization enables it enables automation and works with the rest of this cog. So for your prototype, you don't want to standardize everything at once. Focus on a prototype. Learn because database code is different than app code. What are the ways that make sense to standardize this? And what are the processes that work for us with this? What are the tools that work for us with this? And then how do we automate it? How do we make it so that if we're adding a new index, we are having that change built to make sure that, hey, okay, this code actually makes sense before we are actually deploying it to any of our test environments. How do we automate deploying it to the test environments? What tests do we want to run? what is the processes and the gates that it needs to use, and then how do we manage that deployment to production with the least amount of manual work. Monitoring is incredibly important as well, and this isn't just so that we can tell when systems are down. The State of Database DevOps report, they ask a lot of questions about team practices, and they have found that having the people who are designing the application, making the code, putting everything together, having them have daily visibility into what the customers are doing and the health of the production systems is critical and is a predictor of being a high performer at database DevOps. Monitoring used to, right, we've broken apart in there's IT people who can see monitoring, and maybe a couple devs can, but not a lot of people. Monitoring is very well protected. We need to find safe ways to open that up, that don't expose things that shouldn't be exposed, but also we need to focus on building in an instrumentation into our applications that can work with our monitoring so that we can see what features are people using a lot. Are people using features in ways that we don't expect them to? Telemetry is really, really key and really interesting, and needs to be married together with monitoring data to provide real visibility that informs us about what does the customer value and do they value what we thought they were going to value. And finally, protecting and preserving data. This needs to be part of the whole DevOps cycle. This isn't just something that the DBA takes care of or something that the network administrator takes care of, because we could expose all sorts of security problems in our application as we're building it. We need to build into our process checklists and procedures that make sure we are protecting the data as we go. We also need to make sure that we are not in creating test and dev environments, that we aren't exposing sensitive data where we shouldn't. Hackers these days, it isn't, these data breaches that we see all the time, it isn't just that they're getting better and better at, figuring out people's passwords and getting into production. Many, many data breaches are, hey, I'm sending a phishing attack out and I managed to trick someone in this company. Maybe they're in IT, maybe they're in development, maybe they just have access to that environment. I managed to get them to enter their network credentials. So now I have their network credentials. I can get in and act like them, and I can access all of the environments they can access. Even if they can't access production, or even if production is locked down, if I can get to development environments and they have people's phone numbers and personally identifying information, hey, those phone numbers, you can use those to maybe simjack someone's phone. You can do a lot of damage with just personally identifying information these days. So we need to be really, really careful about protecting that data that's part of the development cycle and making sure that we kill, this is a term used, that we kill the sensitive data off wherever we can to minimize the risk that that data can cause to our company. So that's these areas. It's not that we're going to do everything all at once. When we're starting out with DevOps, we really start with standardization and then we move through this cycle. We stay with this cycle though, because DevOps really emphasizes continuously improving. So it's not that we do these once and then we stop thinking about them. As we do DevOps, we are continuing to look at, hey, is there a way we could do this better in terms of standardizing and managing our code? Or is there a way we can improve our automation? Is there a way we can improve our instrumentation? Or, hey, I noticed a way that we are exposing data that is risky. Can we improve that in this area? So this method of looking at DevOps, whether or not you're using the solutions that Redgate provides, I think this is a really, really helpful way to think about how we do DevOps and what we focus on in a DevOps world. To start your journey, to get that prototype going, reach out to us at sales@redgate.com and we will help you work on the who, what, why, and how. Thanks so much for joining me for this webcast. I'm Kendra Little from Redgate Software, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye, folks.